we call the Twilight Zone.
Steve Kerr, and you look at Steph and Clay, and even Draymond with his lack of performance.
He's at 2 in a row, 7 points for him. The twirling Doncic, melting into the defense. The front carry strikes. Swing, fly ball, well hit left center. Ronald Acuña has home rookie rushing record for the Steelers.
Look, he came into this game averaging 3.67 yards per carry, 42nd out of 49 qualified rushers.
Freeze to begin the third quarter. It has been incredible. Here he comes again. Oh, goodness. And a Greek basketball god. And he was a great guy that teaches
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Dingers, Dunks, and Drives, presented by Rally Tau Sports, hosted by the Mafia Sports Report. I am Todd, and this is Aaron. Aaron, how are you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing great, man. I got to say, though, every time this intro video comes on, I get my feelings hurt a little bit. I get a Browns guy getting stiff-armed and Kevin Love just getting absolutely yammed on. So every time I see it, I'm like, all right, well, fuck me, I guess.
Hey, Aaron, how you doing? Terrible.
I'm always in a terrible mood when we start this thing. No,
just reliving the hard moments of being a Cleveland sports fan. Brian liking the stream. What's up, Brian? How you doing? Brian coming in immediately into the chat with a real quick hooday. Hooday to you, sir. Football is back.
Yeah.
And we got a little bit of week one to cover for you guys. Aaron and I will kind of I'll give my perspective on week one for the Bengals. Aaron will cover the Browns. We'll cover Aidan Hutchinson's week one performance. I think he was the most notable rookie, if you will, through week one of the preseason. Maybe we'll touch a little bit on the Field of Dreams game. I know as a Cincinnati sports fan, I think it's important to talk about the culture of it and what I thought of the game itself. And then we'll round it off with a little who the fuck it is. Just a house favorite. A house favorite here for Rally Tau Sports. And tonight, Aaron has
I got a couple who the fuck it is.
Brian coming in here saying he's working on tickets for the Dallas and Tampa games. Brian, so Mary and I are talking about going to New Orleans. That's where we're thinking if we're going to go to a away game this year. Thinking about doing a little mom and dad long weekend in the Nolans, since I've actually never been.
Yeah, I've never been either. But I like where all your heads are at with a warmer.
Carl,
place.
Thanks for liking the stream. Yeah, look, Dallas is. Here's the thing. I've been in the new Cowboy Stadium. It is unreal. Just you feel so tiny being in that state. Have you been in there?
I haven't, no.
So when I worked for my previous employer, our final training program was in Dallas. It's usually in Houston. It was the year of I can't remember what hurricane it was. Harvey, thank you.
Yeah.
And they relocated the training to Dallas, and they're like, "Don't worry," because the whole thing was like, you go to Houston, you get to go to an Astros game. So like, I'm thinking like, fuck yeah, let's do it. I want to go to Minute Maid Park and watch baseball. So they were like, well, don't worry, you're going to get to tour the Cowboys' new stadium. And it was the second year that it was open.
That's sweet.
Like, okay, that's worthwhile.
All right, that's a good consolation prize.
And
Jerry World.
So we're up on the kind of like the grandstand area around between like the second level, the box seats, and then the third level of Cowboys Stadium. In that fucking Jumbotron, I mean, it made me uncomfortable how large it was. Like they had like welcome CarMax on there, and I'm like, I can only read well. Like it's too much for me. I can't even use my peripherals to read the whole thing. Like it was.
Yeah, I can only imagine for that. But for Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse where the Cavs play, just the like the first year LeBron came back, they just installed like a new Jumbotron, and obviously the one for Dallas Cowboys Stadium will be much bigger, but of course a basketball stadium is much more compact, right? And you catch yourself like watching this screen during the game because you can't help it because it's so large and it's so right in your face. And I'm like, I paid tickets to be here, not to watch television. You know what I mean? So I do find the large screen a little bit distracting, although it is really, really cool. Be pretty dope to just like hook your Xbox up to it though.
Right? Just play a little Bobby in the chat.
I'd say Bobby would love that.
Yeah, Bobby play a little Warzone at Cowboys Stadium. I'd love to see the KD ratio for Bobby at Cowboys Stadium, just trying to cover his peripherals in there. Absolutely insane. But Brian, let me know how that goes, man. I think it would be really cool to be able to get you on here live from, especially either Dallas or Tampa or both. Maybe I don't know how frisky you're feeling if you can cop both tickets. But.
He said Dallas and Tampa.
Yeah.
So that's not Dallas or Tampa.
That's both.
My boy Brian here's got some vacation plans, and I respect it. I don't think I've ever seen a professional football game outside of Cleveland Browns Stadium.
Really?
Yeah. I've seen plenty other sports in different stadiums. Football is just one of the... Here's the thing is it's for part of the season, there was traditionally 16 games, which means 8 home games. Right. Even if you're in a place on vacation, you have to be there pretty much on a Sunday for it to work. It's basically got to be in the fall or winter. But I've never made I'm also a notorious, and my friends will back me up on this, I am like your prototypical, I prefer to watch the game at home guy. And I've always been that way.
Oh, so you're the crockety old man sitting in his chair.
It is. Yeah, pretty much, dude. I have such a sick basement setup that it's hard for me to be like, well, how about I, wade through a pile of... Here's the thing. I love NFL football, obviously. That's why we do podcasts on it. It is a sea of drunk people. Sea of it. And, I like to have a couple beers while I'm watching the game and maybe a couple bourbons, depending on how the game goes.
Right. So if it's good, you're just drinking beer. If it's bad, you just start pouring.
I have dipped into the bourbon before halftime. It is.
It goes from like a 2-finger pour to Mary, bring
the bottle. Just bring some ice cubes in the bottle.
Bring me my Tervis. I need to. I need it.
But no, I mean that's definitely something I need to do. But it's just never happened for me.
Bobby, I would love to hear what you thought of Soldier Field, as it could become one of the removed stadiums from the NFL in the next few years here, with the Bears talking about moving into a revenue-based stadium in the suburbs of Chicago, as they should. So my experience of being in Chicago and doing anything around Soldier Field is that it takes an hour and a half to get out of the parking lot that's closest to Soldier Field, because you just basically stack cars on top of each other. Right. And then it's horrible. Like I saw a Northwestern game there back when in my early 20s.
Yeah.
And we drove there. So I lived in Dayton, drove there with a coworker. We were going to drive back, and the game was at noon. So we drove in Friday night, got up early, tailgated, did whatever. We're like, all right, well, let's just drive back tonight. We didn't get out of the game ended at 4:00. We didn't get out of the stadium parking lot for a college football game until almost 6:30. It was atrocious.
Oof.
Yeah. So I was like, fuck this. I'm never coming back to Chicago for a football game. That's ridiculous.
It's so funny. I was just in Chicago 2 weeks ago. Corey's there now. I drove by Soldier Field, and it looks so weird because it's this gigantic UFO on top of a historic stadium. It still has all the old Soldier Field, Roman pillars and all of that. And then this weird, modern spaceship that just got dropped right on top of it. It's kind of wild. It's kind of weird, but we did drive by it. And I know the parking lot you're referring to, because I remember driving by and be like, well, I guess that's the tailgate spot. But it looks like driving through Chicago on a Thursday is miserable, let alone a football Sunday.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was woof. Not the one for me. I got to see a preseason game at Lucas Oil. That place is, Derek was on here last Thursday talking about being in Lucas Oil. it'll rattle your cage a little bit when the fans get rowdy. And even for a preseason game where you're probably at 80% capacity,
right?
Like it was loud in there, and it was a lot of fun. I got to see like 2 series of Andrew Luck, which was enough for me because I didn't know that 2 years later he was just going to be out of football. But like I got to see him play, and I hadn't had a chance yet.
Yeah, I've been to other so I actually was at Lucas Oil Stadium this year for a work event, and then it was actually the week after the draft, and then I've been to Ford Field for Bowling Green and their MAC championship, and then the Little Caesars Bowl. So I've been to other professional stadiums,
just not for an NFL game.
Not for an NFL game, right?
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I guess I've seen the Bengals play in Cincinnati and London, so like that's yeah. When I got to see them play at Wembley, I talked about it Thursday, but like just the whole experience of like watching the American football culture immerse with the primarily British culture, and the only thing they cared about was Bud Light and betting. And it was great. I like the people that sat behind Mary and I were my favorite people because all they talked about was Cooper Kupp, who absolutely dominated the Bengals in that game. Robert Woods, who got a concussion in the first half. So I got to hear about for 15 minutes about how this dude was going to lose like 2 parts of a parlay because of Robert Woods getting a concussion. And then another guy, for whatever reason, had decided to start the Bengals defense against the Rams. And at that point in time, they were one of the most high-powered still, but they were one of the most high-powered offenses in the NFL. And one of his friends was like, "What the hell are you doing?" And just like absolutely roasted this dude for 10 minutes. And I was like, this is fantasy football. This is what it's supposed to be like.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah, it was great.
That is also one of the only acceptable times where you can wear a football jersey.
Oh my God.
For a non-team that's in the game, because it's like, it's like the embassy of football for the United States over there. And I know there's a lot more games now, but I'm pretty sure that was back when they were only doing 1 a year, right?
It was 2.
There's 2. Yeah, but
so
still, even then, like if you're like an American that is, either working or living over there, or just a football fan that is based in London or in Europe, and you're coming in for it, by all means, wear a Vikings jersey if the Vikings aren't playing. I think that's the only acceptable time.
It was awesome. That was actually one of my favorite parts about the tailgating experience, as they call it, was seeing all of the different jerseys from across really like the better part of 3 or 4 decades of football by then. Because I saw as old as like a Johnny Unitas jersey. I saw Franco Harris.
There had to be a Warren Moon in the crowd.
Yes, I was literally about to say I saw an Oilers Warren Moon jersey, and then I saw an Oilers Steve McNair jersey, and those 2 people were together, which I thought that was pretty fucking awesome. But the jersey I actually saw the most, that I remember seeing the most, and you got to remember I drank a lot of beer before the game, so
a lot of Bud Lights,
a lot of somewhat cold Bud Lights.
They don't drink them cold over there, right? Isn't that a thing?
So there's 2 different taps. So they have regular taps and ice cold taps. They call them ice cold taps in the pubs. So you can get a Guinness or whatever lager you want in the ice cold tap. And when I asked for it, they're like, "Okay, American." Like, yeah. Our somewhat room temperature beer isn't good enough for you, is it? But so Russell Wilson, by and large, the jersey I saw.
Interesting.
Yeah. A lot of the green, like the neon green Russell Wilson jerseys, a lot of them. And the Texans had played the Texans and the Jaguars had played in the previous London game that was like 2 weeks prior. So a lot of Blake Bortles and DeShaun Watson jerseys as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I know the Jags are like the adopted team of London because they play there every year.
I just love seeing a bunch of people walk around in Blake Bortles jerseys, because that was like right after he had done the Barstool Sports interview. They're like, "What's your normal day look like?" It's like, "I don't know. Get up, take a piss, eat breakfast, and then I just go play football." Like, that's what I don't know. I mean, that's his career turned out to reflect that exactly. But anyway, before we get into talking about a little preseason football, let's talk about bourbon. So the boys at Rally Towel Sports, we like to drink. But we also like to drink classy because, again, remember, we are the generous degenerates We live a very specific, unique lifestyle that we may like to gamble all our money away and drink a lot of beer, but we also like to occasionally drink some bourbon. So what we wanted to do for you guys tonight, Carp, liking the stream. What's up, buddy? I think rather than doing the snake draft, let's just list our top 3 bourbons.
Okay. So I went a little different here. I got my list. I'm going to go top shelf, middle shelf, bottom shelf, because I think there is a certain level. Obviously, I can sit here and name you 3 top shelf bourbons.
Sure.
But every place you go doesn't always have that option. You know, their middle shelf, or what I might consider a middle shelf, is their top shelf. And I'm like, all right, that's great. I'm going to, I'll get that. Also, when I'm having some drinks at the house, or I'm going to have a handle of something here, it's going to be something I would consider lower shelf and something that I'm going to have more consistently, as opposed to the top shelf, which is this kind of a special occasion thing. So number 1, got to go with my boy,
The Weller.
The Wellers. It is not only, here's the thing, top shelf might even be a little bit of a stretch because of the price point that it's at, but it easily, in my opinion, is one of the best tasting bourbons out there. And I have a little bit of a snippet here I have prepped for you, because everyone knows Pappy Van Winkle.
Sure.
So W.L. Weller distilled Kentucky straight bourbon with wheat before anybody else, including Julian Pappy Van Winkle. They actually worked together, and before Pappy started his own distillery, which he also used wheat to create his bourbon. Now, when Schnitzel Weller closed in 1992, Weller began distilling with where Buffalo Trace is distilled, which is also where Pappy is now distilled. So basically, Weller 12-year-old is made of Pappy that didn't quite make the cut for Pappy Lot B12. And some people will say it's as close to Pappy as you can get for a shitload less.
I mean, like 80% less.
Probably even more than that, because you have to win a lottery to even get it.
Right.
So
that's a good choice.
I go Wellers. I go Wellers 1.
Okay, that's fair. Here's the thing. Caroline liking the stream. What's up, Caroline? So on the night of the NFL of the draft, I mean, I drank 3/4 of a bottle of Weller, and you saw what happened. I mean, it completely fell apart like a big old piece of shit. But
I got a little in here just to get a little stuff.
But that's also that one didn't crack my top 3, but I think that if that were more readily available in this area, I would probably like it more.
So we're pretty fortunate. Yeah. Which is surprising. You're closer to Kentucky than I am.
Yeah, but so Cincinnati is somewhat on this spectrum, but Columbus is the worst, is that people will figure out delivery schedules for liquor stores and then go in there and get their shit. Like, I'm fortunate enough now that I live fairly close to a Crow ghetto that has a liquor store in it. So bourbon is of the least of the most people's concerns that are going into this liquor store.
Yeah.
So when I walk in there, I have a fairly good selection, but there's one guy, according to this liquor store lady, that comes in and gets the one bottle of Weller Antique that they get a week.
Oh, 107.
Yeah.
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 So yeah. So last Thursday I was out and for some I won't get into it because it's still kind of it's supposed to be a surprise to other people, but you guys know why, and it was fantastic and it was really great. So we went out and celebrated with a really, really nice dinner. Went to the sushi restaurant that did a bourbon flight. And this is an honorable mention for me because the first time I had it, I ended with some Weller 107, which was phenomenal. But I had Jefferson Ocean.
Yes.
Have you ever had that?
Yes.
So I love the story behind this bourbon because they distill it at sea, or it's aged at sea, which is so freaking cool to me. But that was the first time I ever had it. It was too new of a bourbon for me to try to add it to the list, but it immediately became one of my just absolute favorites.
Yeah.
So I'm going to throw that as my honorable top shelf mention.
That's a great one because it's not a it's not one that you even think of. Like it's fairly readily available at liquor stores too, because not a lot of people just look for it. But that's a good neat bourbon. Like you don't need to have that on the rocks. You can pour yourself a little two finger of that, and that'll put you to sleep.
Oh yeah. All
right. So my first one is one that I actually drink on here fairly often. It's Angel's Envy.
Angel's Envy.
It was the first bourbon I tried. It's still my favorite bourbon. It's one also in this area that's really hard to find that fortunately now is always readily available to me. And I can't think of a time in the last 8 years that I haven't had a bottle of it at any point in time.
Yeah.
Like that's been my go-to bottle of bourbon. And I drank it the day that Mary and I got married. I had a glass of it a couple weeks after my son was born. Like it's a very specific bourbon that I don't celebrate a little bit. Yeah, there you go. I don't always go to it, but I have very specific moments in my life that are near and dear to Angel's Envy. So that one will always be number one to me.
That sounds good.
And that's my top shelf as well. I mean,
here's the thing. When I say top shelf too, I want the listeners to know I'm talking my personal top shelf. Obviously,
middle class top shelf.
Exactly. Thank you very much. Like a bottle of Jefferson Ocean, I think is like $80. That is like,
yep.
And again, Weller's for like a normal bottle is like 20 or something. I know that when it's not necessarily price, but it's also about scarcity, right? So that's why I say Weller's first. And I'm lucky. So the Giant Eagle by me, they get like 6 cases a week. I talk to the guy, and
shout out to Giant Eagle.
Shout out to the Big Bird. They also do it really smart, and I appreciate them for it. They limit it to 2 per customer, so nobody can just go in there and just
perfect.
It's still like prime COVID toilet paper rules, where they're like, no, buddy, you can only get 2 of these.
No, not you. Yeah.
So that's the way to do it. So for me, number 2 here, I'm a huge fan of it. It is my favorite to make an old fashioned with. I go with Bullet. Bullet bourbon is like my go-to, like, a step above where I'm going to put, that lower shelf. You end up spending about $8 more on the bottle, but it always is good. It's phenomenal. That was the bourbon Corey got me at his wedding. It is always the one that I would say is like my go-to prime quality bourbon.
So Paul coming in here, appreciate you stopping in. Says he's got a little bourbon collection on the shelf. Daily drinker, Makers, can't go wrong with Makers.
I'm not a big Makers guy. It's got a little too.
Really?
It's got this like weird sweetness to it that I like. Dude, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It is just not. It is not my go-to. I got a nice bottle of Maker's Mark one time that was the Tim Couch edition because he was at the University of Kentucky.
Went to Kentucky. Yeah.
So we thought it was the funniest thing ever. So we copped a bottle of that, and it was pretty good. I don't hate Makers, but again, if I think Makers and Bullet are on that same tier, yeah. I would take Bullet over Makers. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair because Bullet is also my number 2.
Oh, let's go! Me and Todd agreeing. This never happens.
Bullet Rye to be specific.
Bullet Rye. See, I like Bullet Orange. That's my go-to. Yeah.
Yeah, Bullet Rye is my number 2. That's one that if somebody were to come into my house and be like, "Oh, can I try this bourbon?" and they put a little bit of Coke in it, I wouldn't be like, "What the hell are you doing?" Right. Like I get that you need to put something in there or make it old fashioned, like you said. Like it's a good. You can mix it. Don't think about what they're doing, and you move on from it.
Yeah, right? Mary tried to put some ginger ale in some Weller's one time, and I almost had a stroke.
Yeah. Nope.
No.
What? So tomorrow, before we start, I want Bobby to share the story of when somebody he knew tried to mix Sprite with Johnny Walker. I want him to give you that story. It's one of the funniest and most uncomfortable things that I got to be a part
insulting.
of.
That's just insulting.
It was nuts. All right, bottom shelf, where are you at? I think we have to agree on this one too.
It's Jim Beam.
Oh, what?
Oh, Jim Beam is it is a great value. It is good. It is probably the lowest quality that I can still just drink straight. Or I prefer on the rocks, whatever. But yeah, that is my go-to. It is a good value. There is nothing wrong with taking some Jim Beam and mixing some ginger ale or some Coke or whatever you want. Honestly, a little ginger beer, not too bad. Or on a nice summer day, a little bourbon lemonade is not terrible either. Yeah. Preferably a little flavored lemonade. I don't like just the regular lemonade, but either way, Jim Beam is like that's the one that if you're coming over and you want some bourbon, that's the one I have on my shelf because I already drank through all the Wellers.
Because the rest of the bourbon's gone.
Sometimes I hide the Wellers when people are coming over. I'm like, hey, you want some bourbon?
Yeah. Here's what you say. Yeah, I got bourbon, but your one that's true to you is like in your bathroom or something and upstairs underneath the toilet because no one goes into the master bathroom, right? Nobody goes up there and takes a shit.
I hope not because we don't have one.
Well, let's just say nobody goes into like your bathroom to do any of the damage. Right. They go into the guest bathroom, whatever. Right. So you hide the good stuff. We've all been there. Anybody that says they have it is full of shit. That's how I see it. So Hubie and I agree on this one. My value bourbon is Evan Williams. You get a whole handle of that for $25 in the state of Ohio.
Evan Williams is good. I have no doubt. I have a relationship to Evan Williams because back before, like in college, right, when I was just drinking Natty Light and I was starting to get into like actually liking liquor as being like how much, Crystal Light can I put in vodka before I don't taste this anymore?
Sure.
So I was like, all right, I'm starting to like actually like bourbons. Have you ever had Evan Williams honey?
Of course.
That was like the first drink where I was like, oh, this is just good on its own. And yep. I've just been a crippling alcoholic ever since. So I'm just kidding.
So Evan Williams and Jack Daniels released the honey flavors kind of simultaneously. And it would have been in our peak college years of drinking. I believe I was like 19 or 20.
Yeah.
Or maybe they were around before that, but that's when I started noticing them on the shelf. And you're right. It was the one that like somebody would bring it and you'd be like, oh, that sounds weird. And they're like, let's do some shots. And they're like, let's do this Evan Williams honey. And you kick it back and you're like, you have like the Coke or the Sprite ready. And you're like,
I'm good.
I'm good.
I know this wasn't the purpose of this exercise, but this is always a question I like to ask people because everyone has been through this experience. Everyone in the chat, I would love to hear your answer to this question. Back when you first started drinking, there was a time when you overdid it for the first time. And there was probably a liquor that was involved with it even to this day that if you were to get a whiff of it would make you gag. My answer to that is Southern Comfort.
Oh, come on.
Well, here's the thing. I used to love Southern Comfort. And then one time when I was like 19, I got obliterated, blackout drunk, drinking nothing but Southern Comfort. My friends would dub it liquid anger because I would just become this whole different person when I drank Southern Comfort. I just get angry and I just do the whole like, here's why you're a fucking asshole, dude. And terrible. So if I get a whiff of Southern Comfort right now, I will go back to like my 19-year-old hangover. And back then, a hangover now is like, oh, I had 2 bourbons last night and now I'm just not feeling great. A hangover when you're 19 is I had 19 of these fucking things. You know what I mean? Yeah. You needed a lot to get hungover. So I'm curious what your drink is that makes you feel that.
My reaction is because it's Southern Comfort.
Is it? Yes.
Yes. Okay. So when I was probably 17, I would say 16 to 18, somewhere in that ballpark. I don't remember how old I was. I went to a party with my older brother who's about 6 years older than me. And his friends are all of age of drinking. So my brother and his friends used to make this drink that they called 24 because it's Dr. Pepper and Southern Comfort. Right?
Yeah.
the 23 flavors of Dr. Pepper. You just pour a shit ton of SoCo into it.
Yeah.
Well, I knocked out like a whole 2-liter of it.
Oh.
And I had the nickname amongst my brother's friends for a while of Pukey because I uncontrollably, explosively vomited all over this dude's patio. I mean, all over it. Mary liking the stream. What's up, babe? Everybody in the chat, get you a Mary. Marys are a true.
Marys are a dime a dozen. They're amazing. No. Everyone's had that moment. I'm seeing a couple in the chat, and yeah, that's a moment you'll never forget, and it's something that you can never get over.
Dude, it's sad. You're right. I can't even look at. So Mary and I were watching Yellowstone, right? The show on Peacock, and they drink Southern Comfort on that show frequently. Even them watching it was like, I would feel my stomach, like my mouth would start watering, like I was going to throw up. Like I can't even be around it. And my uncle every year on Christmas, because I shared the story, I don't know, 6 or 7 years ago to him, he'll like pull out the bottle of Southern Comfort he has and like, you want a glass? I'm like, ha, 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 thank you.
Like, yeah, no, I really don't. No, you want me to puke all over you? I do.
Paul, thanks for liking the stream. Thanks for the info.
Paul, big bourbon aficionado.
He says, next time we're talking bourbon, please invite me. Absolutely. I would love to have a Rally Towel Sports podcast where we just talk nothing but booze. Somehow it fits into all of our wheelhouse, no matter what. Tommy coming in the chat. Appreciate you, buddy. He said Fort Lauderdale Beach, 20 years old, $9.99 bottle of vodka straight up. No idea the brand, but it was $10. That's all you got to know.
Oh God, it was probably like what, Pinnacle or
Chaka,
or what was the other one? Burnett's.
Oh, Burnett's, because it's
Burnett's. Flavored. Yeah, that was like the go-to in like the dorm room of college, where the one guy on your floor had a fake ID.
Yeah,
and you're here's the thing. At that age, and especially when you can't buy it for yourself, it is absolutely quantity over quality.
Sure.
So I get it.
Yeah. Carp said his is Jaeger bombs. Here's the thing. I could still, if somebody came up to me at a bar, was like, you want a Jaeger bomb? I'd take it down in a heartbeat. I still love them. Those Jaeger bombs and Irish car bombs.
You probably get excited to get sick so you can take cough syrup.
So Tom coming in here said, fuck the Browns in the back. Easy, buddy. Easy,
all right,
buddy.
Well,
that's aggressive, but maybe stick around. Let us talk about him a little bit. Maybe we'll turn you around just a little bit, and you'll show a little appreciation to these Ohio boys here. Corey coming in on our Facebook, MD4040.
Yeah, we've all been there. It's like $4 at a gas station. I'm pretty sure the gas stations were required to put some unleaded 87 in it, but I don't know. I'm not sure.
But I also used to, on New Year's Eve, I would always get a bottle of the Blue Boone's Farm. That was a go-to.
Boone's Farm. That's the other one. Oh,
yeah, $3. You drink a whole bottle of that in between all the New Year's shots you're doing, and you never feel completely blasted. It's the best of both worlds. All right. Enough about booze. Let's talk football. Let's talk about the thing that the people want us to talk about. Tom, stick around. Here's the thing at Rally Towel Sports. Our Dingers, Dunks, and Drives presented by Rally Towel Sports. We like the Bills. We have no qualms with the Bills around these parts.
I do.
We like the small market teams. That's why we're here. That's why Tommy wanted to have us on the channel here. We appreciate a small market no matter where they are. If you were to come in here and say maybe fuck the Ravens, Aaron and I would probably do this. We'd shake our heads. So
I'd piss on Art Modell's grave.
Yeah, so that's fine if you want to say that. But anyway, so Aaron, I want to start with you. I want to start with your perception of let's call it the DeShaun Watson debut, how the Browns played in Jacksonville, and I want to hear your perspective on the rookie kicker, because the dude also has an absolute leg kick.
Yeah, so obviously, we've all seen the tape of the Jaguars fan, heckling DeShaun, which again, as the Browns making this move, to be expected. Anytime you go anywhere on the road, this is what your fanfare is going to be. And this is like a quarter of a filled stadium for a preseason game. You know what I mean? This is only going to get exacerbated when he's actually playing. So that'll be interesting to see, but also, again, completely warranted and completely expected. In terms of his actual play, wasn't very good. He was 1 for 5, but also at the same time, he hasn't really played professional football in over a year. As a Browns fan, I'm not worried about that at all. We've all seen enough DeShaun Watson NFL tape. Really doesn't faze me at all. My biggest concern is losing Nick Harris on play 2 for the year. There goes your center, who the Browns drafted 2 years ago to replace J.C. Treader. Right. The guy has been waiting in the wings. You got to feel bad for the guy because, he was sitting there waiting his turn. He certainly was. I think he was a 3rd or 4th round pick where, it was, hey man, we're not expecting you to come in right away and play. Come get coached up, wait your turn. And he had to step in a couple times last year and played really, really well. And the Browns have always had a pretty notoriously good offensive line, especially in the last couple of years.
Sure.
But, that's just absolutely demoralizing. And you really feel for the guy because, again, it was finally his turn to take the role. They weren't bringing anybody in for competition because it was his job to have. And then we lose our backup center this week in practice. So that's going to be a problem.
So do you think the Browns try to go back out and get J.C. Treader again?
So I keep seeing that. I saw that when the Buck center went down. I would just say, I think there's a reason he's still a free agent. I don't know if it's injury concerned. The other thing I've seen floating around there is he's done a pretty good job as he's the players union president.
Yes.
And I've seen a lot of speculation. There's nothing really concrete out there, that the way that he's gone about his business, which of course his whole job is to be player focused, but let's face it, that's going to ruffle some feathers with the owners, that might have not really helped him, in terms of a free agent market. But I'm also of the opinion that, talent speaks. And if there really was a job available for him, he would have already been signed. Sure. I think if anything, the more likely scenario is there's some injury stuff that we don't know about. He was pretty banged up last year, gave it a valiant effort throughout most of the season and played pretty well, even though he was, dragging a leg behind him. Hey, as a Browns fan, it's a guy, he knows the system. He knows the guy to his left. He knows the guy to his right. He knows his offensive line coach. It seems like it would be a pretty obvious fit and a pretty obvious move. But I think there's a little bit more there than we know. It's pretty easy from the fans' perspective to say, well, just go sign that guy. But I don't really know what his physical is showing. I don't know what his health status is. And it leads me to believe that there's actually something going on with him health-wise, which is why he's still a free agent.
Look, yeah, and look, Trey Hopkins is available as a free agent center too. I think when you get into a scenario where you lose 1 and 2 within, really that's 4 days, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to sign somebody. That's the only way that this works out for you. And you have to be able to sign someone quickly who can adapt to an NFL offense quickly. So it's not like there's a rookie waiting in the wings that's going to get a shot at center. You're going to have to go out and get somebody to run.
No, and they did in free agency signed. It seems like it's like Pochik or something like that. I'm sure. Yeah. And he's a swing. He's a guard center, right? And he's been on the Seahawks for a while. He started some games. He's got NFL experience. But again, there's a reason he was on the depth chart, where he was. We're also at the point in the season right now where we're waiting on final cutdowns. So if you're the Browns, I think the move is let's wait and see what happens with some of these other teams. There might be a guy that comes available that you don't even expect to even be an option at this point. We see it happen every year, where there's going to be a player available, when we get to final roster cuts. And I think the Browns are going to be in line to sign an interior offensive lineman and obviously one that can play center. Ryan in the chat asking if there's any other news on the Hunt trade request. Here's the thing, man. I mean, Kareem Hunt signed here at a discount, obviously with his situation that, caused him to leave Kansas City. He's also a Cleveland native, which was a pretty natural fit for him to come back here. He's also on the last year of his contract. And what do we know about NFL running backs is you have a very, very short shelf life. I don't think the Browns signed him to an extension 2 years ago. I think they're happy to see that play out. Jerome Ford out of Cincinnati absolutely tore it up in the preseason game. He played phenomenal.
He played great.
He really did. And again, it's preseason, and I take all of it with a grain of salt. He really did look like little Nick Chubb out there. Yeah,
don't forget that he came by way of Alabama to UC as well. So coming out of high school, he was an SEC style running
high
back.
Pedigree.
Yes, and left Alabama because of how deep the depth chart was, is that he recognized going to the University of Cincinnati and playing with Desmond Ridder, he was going to get a ton of touches, not just carrying the ball, but also receiving the ball out of the backfield. So I think you got him, in the 6th round?
6th, yeah.
Yeah, to me, if you're going to get let's call him a 4th string running back right now.
Well, he is.
Right? Yeah, so that's your best case scenario is that if, say, something were to happen with Kareem Hunt, you're losing the experience of Kareem Hunt, and I'm not comparing the two. I want to make sure I'm saying
I got you.
You get young legs with a ton of upside to replace that. So you're not hurting necessarily to dispose of Kareem Hunt, but you do lose some of that immediate, ability from the way that Kareem Hunt is able to catch the ball in the backfield.
Well, and look at it from the Browns' perspective, right? So the draft capital that's going to come back for Kareem Hunt is what, like a 5th round pick at best? That's not really doing anything for you as opposed to what he can actually contribute for you on the field. Now, if some team wants to come and wow you and we have like a situation like what happened with the Ravens last year. Now, obviously, if it's the Ravens, it's, the Browns aren't going to do that trade within the division, but something like that. And maybe a team gets a little desperate and they're like, here's the 3rd round pick. Maybe you listen a little closer, but the Chubb and Hunt running back combo has been the best 1-2 punch in the league the last 3 years. And unfortunately, they've kind of been offsetly injured at certain times. But that's why you have that type of 1-2 punch. And there's still Dearness Johnson on the roster who, when both of those guys were out last year, absolutely ran through the Broncos last year and showed, that has the ability to be a starting running back in his own right. And we still have Felton on the roster, who we drafted in the 7th round last year. Now, he's more of a wide receiver slot type of running back, but it's really interesting because the Browns are actually in a position right now where it looks like they're going to hold 5 running backs. No fullbacks, but basically Felton's a wide receiver almost, although he's listed as a running back. Right.
Yeah, call him an H-back, right? It's so, like running a wing T, you call him an H-back.
Yeah, so the way I look at it is you're going to let Kareem play out this year. You have no reason to move him. And then you have Ford, who's going to come in next year and be that guy. If you're in dynasty leagues for fantasy football, I think grabbing a guy like Ford right now would be a really smart move, because I think in next year and the year after that, I think he's shown, that he really is going to be a guy that's going to, be a good running back in this league. But again, it's preseason. I don't want to overreact too much. And then on the defensive side of it, we had a really, really great showing by Martin Emerson, who was the Browns' first pick in the draft in the 3rd round this year. And he had, I don't know if you got to see the play, but he just absolutely took the ball from the wide receiver for a pick 6. Just a big man play. And a lot of Browns fans were very curious because we had need at defensive end outside of Myles Garrett during the draft, which of course we re-signed Jadeveon Clowney, which kind of shores that up a little bit. But everyone, defensive back was not our need. You have Denzel Ward, you grabbed Greg Newsome in the 1st round last year, who proved to be more than his weight. And then you still have Greedy Williams, who actually had a really, really good year last year. So cornerback wasn't exactly your position of need. But this guy is a huge, huge body, 6'2", and an absolute man out there, just taking the ball away like he's playing with little boys and just runs it to the house as a pick six, which was phenomenal to see. And by all accounts in training camp, he's been having a really, really good camp. And something I harp on here all the time, your positions of importance. Cornerback is always going to be one of them, defensive end, quarterback, wide receiver. If the Browns are going to have an elite defensive back group where you have John Johnson at safety, Grant Delpit back there as well, and then obviously this cornerback room, I would love to see the opportunity for what we've had in the last couple of years is Myles Garrett getting pressure, making quarterbacks get rid of the ball early, but the just juxtaposition of that where you're actually going to allow Myles Garrett to get coverage sacks would be phenomenal to see this year. And I actually think the Browns, we know what's going on with the quarterback situation, obviously with DeShaun as we wait and see what's going to happen. But obviously a minimum of 6 games, and I would anticipate that's going to probably be at least 12. And we can talk about that later. But I really do think the Browns are in a position to actually have a very, very good defense this year. And that could be a reason why they're actually, still in the mix.
And Denzel Ward, right? That's enough of it, right? I mean, you have a top 3 secondary player on, and you pay the man $100 million, you expect him to perform, and I see no downside in Denzel Ward whatsoever.
It's just his injury concern, but it's NFL football, and everyone's got injury concern.
Yep, absolutely. So Ryan came in here, said switching directions. Carmen got destroyed on the line. So let's talk about the Bengals losing 36-23 to the Arizona Cardinals. Obviously, offensive line play was the biggest pain point for Cincinnati in that Week 1 preseason game. Jackson Carman, by a long shot, and I mean drastically, was the worst performer on the offensive line in that Week 1 game. The play where Brandon Allen got his concussion. So Bengals backup quarterback gets a concussion preseason Week 1. They don't expect him to not be ready by Week 1 of the regular season, of course, based on concussion protocol. But that play was directly led by Jackson Carman, missing Reed, getting pushed off the line, losing 2 steps. Brandon Allen gets hit. Boom, done. There's a couple more plays that you can watch highlights of where Jackson Carman just seems very slow off the ball at left guard. And I think that there's something to the conversation of trying to take a lifelong tackle, right? So Jackson Carman is actually from Ryan and I's hometown, went to our hometown high school, went to Clemson, played right tackle at Clemson, had a fantastic collegiate career at Clemson, and you didn't see the downside of Jackson Carman until that national championship game against Ohio State, when Chase Young absolutely handled him all over the field. That was the first time where you saw, Jackson Carman's kind of slow off the ball. What's he going to do with these edge rushers in the NFL? So the Bengals draft him in the 2nd round, make it clear from beginning of camp that they're going to transition him to guard. They think that with his size and just general athletic ability, he transitions well to the guard position. And I think that he is a prime example that tackles that are born and bred into the position traditionally don't transition well to the interior line because it's such a different position to play. A good right tackle, you're covering a quarterback's front side. You have to have a really good first drop step, and then you have to be able to, when you're blocking the run, to be able to use your chest to navigate an edge rusher, because you're never going to beat an edge rusher off the ball, right? You're going to delay them from making their best move or move them out of the way of the play. That's how you get rid of an edge rusher in today's game. Where Jackson Carman fails is that his first 2 steps off the ball as a guard are so slow, he gets beat off the line, and he gets beat by an interior lineman because, they're not 315 pounds, but they're faster and they have a similar level of strength to him. So you're seeing interior linemen beat him up, and you saw it a lot last year, and you saw it in Week 1 against this preseason game against Arizona. So what do the Bengals do? They run Cordell Volson in this week's and camp this week with the ones. And Jackson Carman gets the last of the reps with the ones. So I think you're seeing where the Bengals had their largest pain point last year in the offensive line. They really gave Jackson Carman the opportunity to figure out, okay, is he going to be able to play left guard for 17 games. And tentatively, right, again, this is week 1 of the preseason, the answer is no. It doesn't seem like that he's figured out he's either hasn't figured out how to play the position well, or he just doesn't have the ability to have the immediate step. Because as an interior offensive lineman, you have to be able to, number one, you're relying on them for any sort of counterplay or any play up the middle. You're relying on them to lead the charge, because the fullback position is next to non-existent now. There's less than 5 of them that consistently play. So your centers and guards are the ones that lead you to 3 yards or 4 yards, right? Because you get 4 yards 3 times, you're playing for a first down, you keep moving forward. That's the old school I formation mentality. Jackson Carman hasn't shown that he has that ability. So you're going to see Cordell Volson get reps in this next game with the ones, if you will. You'll see more starters in week 2. You're going to keep hearing about this battle. I've even heard Trey Hill getting in the mix over Jackson Carman this week so far. So it'll be interesting to see where he kind of tiers on the depth chart as we get through the preseason, because to me that was the largest pain point for the Bengals for week 1. You saw where even when they played the Browns last year at the end of the year, how bad that second level of the offensive line was. You saw it in this preseason game as well, where they haven't the guys that aren't playing on that first level are still struggling to kind of get their footing. And even Isaiah Prince he played well, but he didn't play, for a guy that started 8 games at right tackle last year. He just didn't look comfortable.
Sure.
That to me, that was the biggest pain point. I was really, really excited to see Chris Evans had a 75-yard touchdown that got called back on a penalty. He looked excellent. Again, take it with a grain of salt in the preseason. He didn't have a ton of total yards, but he looked really good. I hate agreeing with Corey on things like this, but he's right. I think that he is a good talent for the Bengals to keep around to relieve Joe Mixon moving forward. You saw guys like Kendrick Pryor and Trent Taylor play really good at wide receiver. They were getting open. I believe there was only 2 drop passes during the whole week 1 of preseason, which that was the big hubbub last year with Jamar Chase. A lot of drop balls. Didn't see a lot of that. On the defensive side of things, 7th round pick Jeffrey Gunther out of Coastal Carolina had the most pressures in the game. Played absolutely insane. Played out of his mind. For a guy that they were talking about would likely not make it onto the 53-man roster, immediately showed that at round 7, there's still some value in the draft, right? And I was really excited to see how passionate he was during the game. Every pressure, he was he was going dap at his teammates, trying to get people hyped up. It did not matter to him that this game doesn't count towards the record. He was out there trying to prove his position.
Sure.
I loved watching him. I just lost his name. Zachary Carter, 3rd-round pick out of the University of Florida, played very, very well as well. He played both interior and edge rusher in the preseason game. Just provides more depth to an already very strong defensive line. We'll see him a lot more. And then I think I want to wrap it up. Evan McPherson kicking 2 55-plus yard field goals.
Yeah.
I cannot stress this enough. We've talked about this on this podcast a lot, and I want to hear your take on it. I think that finding a good young leg and sticking to that leg is imperative for a team that gets into the playoffs and moves forward.
100%. Yeah. It's just such a between the ears position where, especially when you're watching training camp or looking at it, the kickers and punters are fucking off over here while everyone else is doing this, because it's such a specialized position, which is why, in the last 10, 15 years, you've seen punters be the placeholder as opposed to it used to be the backup quarterback, because they can go practice this over here while we're doing the rest of this over here. So that became a prerequisite for punters to be able to do. And you had alluded it to a little bit when I was talking about the Browns, but Cade York is somebody the Browns actually traded up and invested significant draft capital in. And I've always been you don't invest in kickers in the draft because you can always get undrafted guys. Even the guys that get drafted don't necessarily, I've seen the Browns do it, a ton of times before where they draft guys. We've basically been, trying to find someone to replace Phil Dawson for the last 12 years.
That's that's the last kicker that came to mind for me for the Browns was Phil Dawson.
Yeah, it's just been such a hard position to fill, and obviously Cleveland having an open air stadium on Lake Erie, and it's a really, really hard thing to do, and it's actually really interesting to listen to Phil Dawson talk about it. He actually took lessons from a Marine sniper on how to read the flag in terms of when the wind was blowing and when you could see two folds of the flag blowing, this is how much, it offsets your direction, if you will. It's if you ever get a chance to listen to Phil Dawson talk about it, I highly recommend it. It's super, super interesting, especially for hearing someone talk about kicking a football, which we all kind of scoff at, but it is such an important position on the football field. And obviously McPherson last year, really proved his weight. And, I think the AFC North, and I'm hoping that Cade York falls into this, but when you have Justin Tucker in the same division as well, who is the top of the class in kickers. Exactly. Basically the Ravens just did him a solid this year. And we're like, yeah, we'll make you the highest paid kicker again because you deserve to be it. And yeah, so I know we wanted to get into this, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? At least in terms of the Bengals and in terms of the Browns. So that was my good right now is Cade York. I have seen him, and again, these are just beat reporters taking videos on, the training camp field, but Cade York hit a 55-yard field goal yesterday in training camp that would have cleared 68 yards. Like, they showed the video of it, and when you saw it on the level of the uprights, you would have thought he was kicking a 30-yarder. Because it had that much more distance to go. And as a team that's really, really been searching for that type of position, I know Browns fans are really, really banking on this guy to finally be that guy because, yeah, again, I've said it, we all scoff at kickers all the time, but getting 3 points out of a possession is extremely important. And when you can cross the 50 and be in scoring range, that is hugely valuable for your team.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, we saw Evan McPherson win the Bengals multiple games, a couple of playoff games, and at very integral parts. I think I am of a similar mindset to you that there is always a kicker out there in free agency that you can grab and it makes you better. And now we're on the opposite sides of the fence where both teams that we support went and drafted their future kicker. And I think that
I've always been against that move. I've always been against that move.
And you see the Bills going out and getting, punt god from San Diego State, and you see him punt that 82-yard punt, and I believe almost 70 yards of that was in the air. I mean,
which is impressive, but also, and I know it went to the end zone, and I'm certainly not going to make fun of that, but it's interesting to me that the Bills got him because they're not a team to me that is in dire need of changing field position that drastically. So having you know what I mean? Like the Bills are good. You know what I mean? Like them punting 2 to 3 times a game, maybe, you know what I mean? And you really want more accuracy than you do power.
Yeah. You need him pinning, right? That's his job. He pins.
Right. I'm not saying he can't, but
I think so. To me, I watched that. I watched him do that, and there's so to have that much hype around a specialist of the game as there was for Matt Ariza. Like that was just him introducing himself into the NFL. Like, look at what I can do.
Sure.
Right. And you watched him even at San Diego State, because don't forget, he was also there. He was their place kicker for most of his time, and he did most of the kickoff stuff for. And
I imagine it'll be the Bills' place kicker as well, right? Where there's no doubt you're taking it at the 25 every time.
I would think so. I think you'd almost have to with a leg like that and his just general athletic ability, because he's also 6'3", 195 pounds, less than 10% body fat. I mean, he's a specimen of a human being. So the idea behind drafting him it's cool because there was, again, for a specialist like a punter or a kicker or a long snapper, like there's just not a lot of media hype around these guys. And then you get it for just a second, you get a taste of it, and you're like, all right, this is the part about football that nobody talks about. But then you watch the clip of it 4 or 5 times, you're like, this is the good shit about football
Right.
that I miss. Right.
Yeah, and I'm all about cross sports analogy, so I'm going to do this here. And I'm going to go team sport to non-team sport. It's like Brace and DeChambeau. You know what I mean? It's really, really cool that you can drive the ball that far. But can you putt?
Yeah,
can you chip? Can you use a 9-iron? And again, I'm not saying he can't. I'm not. It really isn't. That's not the point. It's
right.
The leg is so fucking impressive. It's like being a long drive competition guy.
Yeah, it's for show.
There's a reason that a lot of those guys in the long drive competitions aren't actually PGA players, because there are going to be times when for that guy, he's going to need to take 40% leg and pin it within the 4. That's the impressive thing for a punter. It's really, really cool to see. Really fucking cool to see though. So that'll be interesting. And here we are talking kickers and punters. So that's preseason, baby.
That's why you want. If you're just tuning in, this is Dinger, Dunks, and Drives. We're here to talk about punters and kickers.
Yeah.
If you're not interested in that, I'm sorry, you're on the wrong channel.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to tell you.
No, but special teams are such a huge importance to the game. It's so integral. So it'll be interesting. I'm really banking on Cade York. Obviously, we saw what McPherson did last year. He's, and again, what's really interesting is it's like the AFC North is, you see that. You do see that in divisions all the time where it's like, this is the quarterback division. This is the defensive end. I don't think I'm not saying the AFC North is going to be the kicker division, but when you constantly get your ass kicked in every year by a guy that looks like Justin Tucker, you kind of have to look at it and go, fuck, we kind of need that.
Yeah, we got to compete with this guy because you're not going to be better than him, right? He's the best kicker in the NFL. It's a very distant 1-2 between him and then insert here, right?
Yeah.
It was Zerline. Zerline kind of fell off. I don't know what happened to him.
Dragged the leg.
Yeah, like now you have the distance, right? But you're right. You have to have your way to inch closer because, you don't have Justin Tucker, but you have an Evan McPherson, you have a Cade York, and you have the ability to trust somebody for a 50-yard field goal.
Yeah, and I will say too, Cade York is not there. He has not kicked a game in NFL. I mean, trust me, there's a reason he was the first kicker taken off the board. And so far, he has shown that he can live up to that ability.
Right.
But until we see him actually kick in an NFL game, I'm still going to be kind of holding my breath a little bit.
Sure.
But we'll see. We'll see.
Sure.
It's certainly important, though. I agree with that.
So Ryan kind of leads me into my good for the Bengals. He said, I don't think we'll miss Bates so much as we thought. What do you think of him being in the box? What do you think of him being in the box seats means? So my good of that game was watching first round pick Dax Hill played excellent in kind of a safety nickelback kind of deal. He played various parts on the field. He was a part of, let's call it 8 plays in total, and 5 of those 8 plays he was a part of either of an incomplete pass or a tackle or something of the sort. So he played very, very well. Again, just as Aaron said, this is the preseason. I want to see NFL game 1 snaps. I want to see snaps in a real game where it counts to be able to loosen up the belt on Dax Hill. But I think that you watch your first round pick who kind of fell to you do very, very well in a preseason game. You hear a lot of him in training camp getting reps with the ones. He's obviously kind of playing in Jesse Bates' spot for the time being until the Bengals figure out what they're going to do with Jesse Bates. And it's good to hear that a first round pick plays off, especially when you draft him at 31, right? Because we've seen a lot of late first round picks just not pan out. They take time to develop whatever. It sounds like Dax Hill is adjusting nicely to an NFL paced game. What do I think this means? What do I think the box seat, Jesse Bates sitting in the box seat thing? It doesn't mean shit to me, honestly. He's on a franchise tag. He could suit up. He cannot suit up. It doesn't mean anything to me until pens to paper and he's got a helmet on, honestly.
And it's preseason week 1. You know how many starters didn't play anyway?
Yeah. So Jesse Bates hasn't been participating. He's still kind of speculating through social media that he's a Bengal through and through. The Derwin James contract certainly doesn't help the Bengals' position on safeties and what they should be getting paid. Derwin James is going to be making almost $20 million a year, a different type of safety, right? I'm not comparing the two, but when you're talking about money, because the wide receiver contracts happen because Christian Kirk got paid so much by the Jaguars, right? So then you get a guy like Derwin James who gets this top tier safety contract, then a guy like Jesse Bates who probably hovers in this area of the safety category, kind of high middle category. He's a little bit more valuable to an agent now. Right.
Oh, 100%. But what's interesting is the Bengals are in the exact same situation as the Chargers, where they can afford Derwin James because they're not paying Herbert anything. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're getting Burrow at such an insane value. And I'm not saying that means you have to back the Brinks truck up for Bates by any means, but teams are in that position. When that is the most valuable contract in sports, is the good quarterback on a rookie deal. So you certainly have some money to play with. I know Dax, from a division rivals perspective, we all did draft night together. That I was so bummed about that because I think he's going to be really, really good. And then I also think we kind of fall into the Madden trap where it's like, all right, I need 2 safeties, I need 2 cornerbacks, 3 linebackers. That's not how defense is played. You can let's assume Bates comes back and is signed and is, he's going to suit up for the Bengals week 1. He can kind of play that pseudo linebacker position where he's lining up against tight ends or is rushing the passer, or we see that all the time with safeties. I actually think that that's just as valuable as deep coverage. Safeties,
that's what provides Derwin James so much value is his ability to get to the quarterback.
He's like a pseudo linebacker that can cover. It'll be interesting to see what the Bengals do. But I would imagine, especially after the Le'Veon Bell thing from a few years ago, I think this is just a holdout until the season starts. Why risk a training camp injury when he's on the franchise tag, right? Yeah, I think he'll be there week 1, and I don't think you have to worry about it, frankly.
Yeah. And look, at the end of the day, this football is the NFL's business, right? And sometimes the business deals get delayed, and they don't always work into the suitor's favor, and you have to haggle until you get it right. And that's exactly what's going on here. So it's not I don't lose any sleep over Jesse Bates not signing a contract, but I also won't be disappointed that the Bengals signed him to a 4-year deal, right? Like that wouldn't hurt my feelings in any way, especially now with the Bengals getting the revenue through becoming Paycor Stadium, that escrow money, as the NFL calls it, aka the signing bonus money, becomes very, very hefty for guys like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Joe Burrow. Those guys that you could start actually getting them front loaded and then worry about the rest later. So when it's all said and done, I like Dax Hill a lot. I don't think that there's anybody that can watch film on this guy and see too much real downside. But again, you got to wait until he gets some real NFL snaps. But he was my overall good for the Bengals. And then my bad was Brandon Allen getting a concussion. That it's never a good feeling when your backup quarterback goes out in series 2, I believe, is when he got the concussion. But Jake Browning played very, very well. I think he arguably made one of the best throws in week 1, running to his right, basically made the Pat Mahomes sidearm throw down the sideline, completed it for a first down. So it's not a bad thing when you watch your third string quarterback make a super athletic move. But my ugly was Jackson Carman. I think that I cannot stress enough that the Bengals did everything that they needed to do in free agency to shore up where they felt like they needed to shore up, and they drafted Cordell Volson for a very specific reason, and they also have Trey Hill for a very specific reason. It is because left guard was the one thing that was the question mark, and you're going to make 3 young guys compete for that spot. So that's going to be that spot on the depth chart is going to be up in arms until really week 1 when the Bengals take the field. So And I don't know how you feel about Aaron, but watching a preseason game to me and kind of and filtering through what needs to be filtered through and trying to watch the positions, I was just really fucking happy to watch professional football. I don't know how you felt about it.
I watched the replay because I went to the Feast of the Assumption on the east side of Cleveland, which is like the big Italian street festival where we have Little Italy in Cleveland, or as I like to call it, Littly. It's like the big outdoor street vendor. We went and did that. So I watched the replay of it. But as we're walking, so my bad for the Browns is Anthony Schwartz. Anthony Schwartz, Browns fans will know, he was a third round receiver taken last year out of Auburn, just an absolute burner. No hands, absolutely no hands. And you could see it again in week one of the preseason. And Browns fans will know him as basically the reason that Baker Mayfield separated his shoulder last year, because he's the receiver that Baker was targeting on the play that he threw the pick, completely gave up on the route. Baker Mayfield went downfield and decided, I got to lay the wood. So Browns fans still like to blame Anthony Schwartz for that. I think that's a little bit unjust, but also at the same time, this guy really just hasn't been able to figure it out as a third round receiver who I understood why they drafted him. You see the allure of the Tyreek Hill type receiver where it's, let's get a guy that, we're just going to have him on a go route and we can get an open downfield. We've seen it constantly in training camp where, he's unfortunately just not really getting the position. So that's absolutely my bad. For the ugly, the obvious answer, of course, is the looming DeShaun situation. So I'm going to shy away from that, but I already mentioned it before. It's obviously Nick Harris being out for the season as your starting center. It's one thing in week one to get an injury like a Zach Wilson one right now where it's, that's super fucking unfortunate, but I know I'm going to see him again. But to lose a guy for the entire season before the season even starts playing in a meaningless football game,
that's a massive kick in the dick.
That is ugly. That is what I would consider the definition of ugly. So that'll certainly be a problem for the Browns, especially because you are looking at a really, really good offensive line. So, perhaps they can plug that hole. And I was going to mention this too, when you were talking about the Bengals line is, that was your problem position last year. And no one's doubting the Bengals skill makers. It was how much time can you actually give Burrow and can you keep him upright and healthy? Right. Was it Carmen, right?
Jackson Carmen. Yeah.
Jackson Carmen, what you were talking to me earlier about, he's obviously starting with the ones after the week one preseason game. He's now losing some time to his backup. They're splitting that. And it reminds me a little bit of what's going on in Carolina with, Baker and Darnold, where it's, that's the dumbest thing you can do because you're basically going through this song and dance of like, oh, I don't know, it's going to be an open competition. No, give all your fucking reps to the guy who's going to be the guy. And let's go that route. And this as a Bengals fan, the offensive line is so much more a unit than it is, okay, I got an 87 at right tackle, a 70, you know what I mean? Like I got a 91 at left tackle. If you're going by like Madden ratings, it doesn't work that way in professional sports. It's how good are they as a unit? You're only as good as your weakest position.
Absolutely. Cohesion is I think having a cohesive offensive line that runs in synchronization is what made the Browns offensive line so successful. It's what makes the Colts offensive line so successful is because they're so synchronized together and there's not really a misstep. And if there is a misstep, they're holding each other accountable. Right. And it's not necessarily the blame game, but when you have five guys that just understand how to play the game together, like an offensive line, to me, and this is somebody who through my life of playing football, played all of the positions on offensive line. That's what I did for my football time. Like, I understand how important it is to trust the person on your left and your right.
Yeah.
Right. Because the difference between being out for the season, right, because of getting rolled up on or a misstep or being able to move forward on the field together is super important.
Yeah.
And you watch the Bengals offensive line last year, there was no synchronization. It was 5 guys playing 5 different games. And it shows when a quarterback gets pressured very hard and often, like Joe Burrow was, you're not synchronized. So I think that's, to me, a quarterback is every quarterback in the – I'm going to go on like a 2-minute tangent and then I'll get back. Every quarterback in the NFL has the ability – is there for a reason, right? They've shown that they have the ability to play at the highest level of the game, and they excelled in their position prior, right? So there's no argument that an NFL quarterback should be there. But the NFL quarterbacks that struggle the most are the ones that don't have a good offensive line to give them the time they need. David Carr is the best example for that I've ever seen. Yeah. David Carr was the best quarterback in college football for 3 of the 4 years he was at Fresno State. He got to Houston, and he got fucking demolished for 5 years. And he turned into a laughing stock of the NFL.
This is such a random thing. Do you remember it was probably his 2nd or 3rd year, and it was like the NFL draft commercial for that year? Or it was like, who's your team going to draft? And it's literally just Derek Carr lined up under a center with nobody else on the offensive line. It's just so insulting.
The only offensive lineman that they got him was out of the expansion was Belisari from the Jaguars.
Yeah. And he just got murdered. I mean, I think the example right now is probably Justin Fields. Because I got to watch a lot of Justin Fields at Ohio State, and the guy's really good. He's not just good like, oh, this guy's an athlete, he can move around. He's got a fucking cannon, and he can put it right there. He obviously had some pretty skilled receivers at Ohio State between Olave and let's face it, like all the receivers that have come,
just all of them,
all of them. But anyways, I digress, and I think Fields is in that exact same situation right now in Chicago, where it's the best quarterbacks get drafted by the worst teams, and oftentimes those teams do not have good offensive lines in place. Let's face it, Joe. That's what happened to Joe Burrow too, especially his rookie year. And to the Bengals' credit, they have made steps and strides to shore that up. And I know a lot of people scoffed at the Chase draft pick when Sewell was still on the board. Yeah. That's not to say that that was the right pick, even though obviously Jamar Chase had one of the greatest rookie receiving records. Or one of the greatest one
of the best rookie years ever. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you can't protect Burrow, a Jamar Chase isn't really worth a whole lot to you either. So I do see both sides of that. So again, we're in preseason. This is the fun time where we get to all talk about this in speculation. And let's wait until week 1, because we see this all the time in the preseason, where problems that you see in the preseason aren't actually problems when you actually get into real games. Like when I'm watching the Browns replay tape, I'm not noticing a lot of pressure. And I'm like, well, Myles Garrett isn't out there. Jadeveon Clowney isn't out there. JOK isn't out there. There's so many guys that aren't actually playing. Also, the guys that are playing really well, they're playing well against 2nd and 3rd string guys that are, just trying to make the roster. So if you have a bad team, the preseason is great to see your rookies and guys that, that was honestly, I said the good for the Browns being Cade York. It honestly is every single guy that got drafted by the Browns this year. And keep in mind, we didn't have a 1st or 2nd round pick. They all had moments in that game. So that was the big thing for the Browns is Cade York played well. Emerson played well. You saw all the defensive tackle whose name is now escaping me, but regardless, Perry and Winfrey, everyone had some moments where it's like, okay, great. Hey, these guys are showing me why we drafted them, but also I'm probably not going to really talk about these guys for 2 or 3 years. Nick Harris, who I said is out for the year, when we drafted him as a rookie, it was like, oh shit, this guy is playing pretty well at center and he's starting this game. I'm not going to hear about him for 2 or 3 years. Ford, played phenomenal. He's probably not going to play a lot this year. And that's okay. That's if you're a team that is above like the bottom 6 teams or the bottom 6 rosters, I hope I don't have to hear about any of these fucking guys again.
Yeah. Yeah, you truthfully, you do not want your 6th and 7th round pick becoming the top part of your depth chart, right? And now there's some exceptions to that, right? Like again, Cordell Volson being a 4th-round pick out of North Dakota State for the Bengals, that was the value that he possessed there comes solely from really limited film and him popping up on the radar because of the Senior Bowl, right?
Right.
So then, so then the notoriety comes based upon that. But even then, if you're for the Bengals in that circumstance, you're not thinking like, oh, great, the 4th-round guy is going to be my starter this year. You're thinking like, oh shit, we need to make sure that we create some depth here, right?
Yeah.
So that's the key to winning is always having somebody on your bench that can step in and not be the same, but not make it worse.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
It's anything in business is the same way. Everybody has their top salesperson. Everybody has their head honcho. But when that person has to step out, the person that fills in for them, they have to be able to sail the ship. They don't have to be. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they have to be able to sail the ship, and it doesn't
tread water. Just tread water for us.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, all right. So Ryan asked us a question: who starts at Tennessee?
No question.
It's got to be Tannehill still.
Of course.
I watched a lot of that game, and when I say
Malik
that,
played very well.
I watched a lot of Malik Willis, right? So I didn't watch that game to watch anybody else except for Malik Willis, and I think there were a lot of people doing the same things that you and I were doing, Aaron, is watching him and seeing him enter the NFL, right? And then you hear Vrabel's comments after this preseason game, and Vrabel's like, well, we pulled him because he wasn't running the offense the way that we want him to run the offense.
Exactly. He's not ready.
He's not ready to be an NFL quarterback. Here's the thing. We have watched a ton in the last 7 to 10 years of scrambling quarterbacks get into the NFL, be put in the starting role very prematurely, and they fail. Because the scrambling quarterback in the NFL is not a full-scale NFL-ready quarterback. You have to be able to have the pocket presence to stand there for 3 to 5 seconds and check to your third or fourth read to be able to get the ball off. You can't always scramble left, which I don't know if your perspective of it, Aaron, but I watched him run left more than run right, and then I went back and watched some footage of him at Liberty. And he did the same thing at Liberty too. He always rolls left and then he throws across the field.
It was what looked like it was fucking fun to watch, right? Let me just say that. It was really, really fun to watch. But what I saw was an extremely raw quarterback who has tools and has the ability and certainly belongs in this league, but has gotten away with his athleticism at every level that he's been at so far. And the NFL is not that way. I've watched Kyler Murray get chased down, and that guy is one of the quickest guys. At Lamar Jackson, you see get chased down sometimes.
Yeah.
By a defensive end who is twice his size. This is just a different level of league. Not to mention, let's face it, the guy played at Liberty. He wasn't going up against, Sunday talent on Saturdays very often. So
sure.
I certainly think that the guy has a lot of game. Vrabel's comments are very telling, though, of a guy. I think you put Willis in Desmond Ritter's situation, and it might feel a little bit different. I thought Ritter played really, really well also. He
did.
But that might be more exciting as a Falcons fan because you're just like, all right, fuck, let's let this guy just, no irony here, but like Michael Vick it out. But that's not really the Tennessee Titans are a team that won the AFC last year. They're not looking for a guy to come in there and do his own thing. It's
sure they're not in rebuild mode.
No, not at all. And I understand why they made that pick because I don't think Tannehill is a build around your franchise type guy, but he's certainly above mid-level talent. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like he's probably 16, 15, or 14 in terms of who do I want starting in the NFL. He's a guy that can come in. He's got some athleticism. He can move around, but he can play within the offense. And not to mention Mike Vrabel is a defensive-minded coach. So what does he want on his offense? Guys that can fall in line. He doesn't want guys out there necessarily that are going to rewrite the script or decide to play backyard football and just make up plays on their own. And I saw the same thing you did. It was a bootleg right, and the next thing I know, he's spinning his body and going off to the left. Your entire team is on the other side. You might have one guy as like the decoy on a play action play. And even the touchdown that he scored, where he ran it in for like 12, 11 yards, was kind of lucky. But at the same time, really, really fun to watch. Really excited
Super
to see
athletic
this guy
move too.
Yeah. Again, I think this guy belongs in the league. I think he can have a very good NFL career. Again, being a Titan, it's very easy to make like maybe he can be like a young Steve McNair, because, Steve McNair at the beginning of his career was a very athletic quarterback, but then again, kind of, as you lose that athleticism a little bit, you need to be a pro style quarterback. And Steve McNair really was that to a T, in my opinion. But Malik Willis, great game, but there's a reason that Tannehill is going to have this job for the entire year and maybe even next year. I think what I saw was really, really raw tape.
Yeah. All right. So if you're just tuning in, this is Dingers, Dunks, and Drives, presented by Rally Towel Sports, hosted by Mafia Sports Report. We've been covering the Bengals, the Browns. We talked a little booze. We're talking rookies. And I think I really want to talk about the rookie that impressed me the most in this preseason, and that's Aidan Hutchinson. Yeah. I got to tell you, I watched about 25 minutes of just footage of him from that week, his limited time that he had in that game. And he's ready. He is an NFL ready guy. I mean, so again, you take the stat line with a grain of salt. Couple tackles, pressure on a quarterback. He had one tackle for loss, but he also had a play that caused a holding penalty, and he also had a mistake that he made off the ball that turned into a tackle for him.
Yeah,
right. So I'll start with the mistake. So his first play that he's on the field. He's running basically one. Atlanta's running mostly ones. Mariota's on the field. Mariota runs a rollout right bootleg, an intentional quarterback bootleg, and Hutchinson misreads him, starts running basically, let's call it southeast instead of running just straight south. Mariota cuts the corner on him, and Aidan Hutchinson catches up, runs 12 yards and catches up to him for an 8-yard gain.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe a bad first read, but recognizes the mistake, flips the switch, and goes and grabs the tackle. And then within the next 5 plays, goes and grabs Atlanta's running back at the time for a 4-yard loss. Next series comes out, gets a 10-yard penalty off of Atlanta's right guard at that point in time, and also beats Atlanta's starting left and right tackle off the ball twice. And mind you, I'm watching him, and there was very minimal contact from an offensive lineman to him. Right. And what I mean by that is he is so fast that there is no time to react to be able to even put your hands on him. And when you're grabbing him by the sides of his shoulder pads and not underneath his shoulder pads. Have you watched Hard Knocks, that first episode of Hard Knocks yet?
I haven't yet. I'll end up watching it, but I usually do it in like spurts.
Sure. So I think the interesting thing about Aidan Hutchinson that they present in the first episode, and I haven't watched the second one yet, I know it just came out, is that he's a very interesting player to me, because he doesn't fit the mold of the vocal leader on the field. But then you watch some of the highlight reel of him at Michigan and what he did for Ajobo to become before he tore his Achilles, a first-round pick.
Yeah.
That dude is a bona fide star. Like he has every tool in his pocket to be in the conversation with the Bosa brothers, with the Myles Garretts and those guys, just watching the footage of him, right? And again, I'm saying this based off of footage. We haven't seen NFL snaps yet, but it's really exciting to watch a guy on a team like the Lions play at such a high level and make everybody else around him play to that level, right?
Sure.
And I'll pose the question to you, and I want to hear what you think about this. Is this the kind of guy that Dan Campbell needs to prolong his career as a head coach?
Wow, that's a really good question. I don't know. So here's the way I look at it. I would not be surprised at all if the Atlanta Falcons had the first pick next year, right? I think in terms of, showing it on an NFL level, I think there's a reason that Hutchinson was right up there to be the number one pick, if not until like the last week before the draft. I think he showed that in his first preseason game. But here's the thing about preseason. You can wash away everything if it doesn't go your way and call it preseason, or you can confirm all of your beliefs by saying, this is exactly what I expected. But for the first preseason game, do you know what I mean when I say it like that? Is
absolutely.
So I'm just not quite there yet. Now, he was the second pick in the draft. So yeah, the talent's there. Like, there's no doubt about that. The guy's a freak athlete. Sure. We saw it at Michigan. I have no doubt that he's going to be a good NFL player. Am I going to put him up there with the Boses? No. Am I going to put him up there with TJ Watt? No. Am I going to put him up there with Myles Garrett? Absolutely not. But if I'm a Lions fan, what I saw was hope. What I saw was, this was a good pick. Now, not every pick, not every guy is going to now be drafted in and be a top 3 guy. Numbers just don't allow it to be that way. You know what I mean? So I will, like with every other preseason game, I will hold a suspension of disbelief just for a little bit, and let's wait and see. I also think, unfortunately, the Lions are probably going to be in line for another top 5 pick. But to answer your question on the Dan Campbell thing, I think he's exactly the kind of coach that Detroit needs. And here's the thing. It depends on how much the owner is willing to throw a leash out, right? Now, sure. Dan Campbell was pretty highly regarded amongst the NFL circle as an NFL guy. Yeah. And that's probably exactly what the Detroit Lions need.
Yeah, I mean, you get Sean Payton's seal of approval. That holds very high in the NFL world.
What happened after Zach Taylor's second year? What was the fan base saying? What was the sentiment around the head coach?
Well, it's shit or get off the pot, right?
And then what happened?
And then he shit, and everybody ate his shit, right? Like that's kind of how it works. Like the Bengals go to the Super Bowl, and everybody's.
It's just such a what have you done for me lately type of league. And it really does take a long time, because here's the thing. Dan Campbell shows up year 1. None of the guys on the team are quote unquote his players. He's not the GM. He's not the guy drafting the guys, but you know what I mean? Year 2. Okay. We're installing something. We're building towards something. Okay. It doesn't quite work out this way, but we're starting to turn the ship. I honestly think like you really do. There are certain situations where it doesn't call for it. Hugh Jackson. But I think Dan Campbell has shown that this is something that you kind of want to see through.
Sure.
And I don't know that that's going to lead to anything. But I certainly would not be looking at, regardless of how this Lions season ends, and we haven't even started it yet, but I don't necessarily have really high hopes for it in terms of wins and losses. But what I do have high hopes for is that culture shift. I think about a guy like Amon St. Brown last year, where the tidbit of it, I haven't watched the Hard Knocks, but just memorizing every single wide receiver that got drafted in front of him. Like, there's just this something about this roster and these guys. And like you said, with Hutchinson, he might not be the vocal leader, but he certainly seems like a guy when he's on the field and he's between the numbers, it is just all football all the time. And if I'm a Lions fan, that's what I'm looking for this year. And there's nothing wrong with winning 5-6 games, but what I need to see and what I'm reminded of is the Baker rookie year as a Browns fan, or the year they fired Hugh Jackson, was, I think we went 7-9-1, but you could tell there was a change and this isn't the same old team, and I don't have to go to a winless fucking parade to bury the hatchet. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if I'm a Lions fan, that's what I'm looking at. That's what I want. But no, I don't really think this is going to lead to anything playoff wise this year. But I think you give Dan Campbell a longer leash than you would maybe some other coaches.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about when you bring a salt of the earth guy like Dan Campbell in, and you take a franchise like the Lions, who are historically not good. Let's call a spade a spade. It's just not. It's an unsuccessful franchise. They don't have, similar to the Bengals. It's an unsuccessful franchise. There's no Super Bowl victories. You have no rings to bring back in, right? You've been through the same ship. You've been a part of that ship, but yet I think when you look at a guy like Dan Campbell and you start building the roster, right? And I think a lot about, and you'll see too when you watch the Jamal Williams speech in the first episode of Hard Knocks, and how he brought himself to literal tears, talking about how horrible it was for him to be on such a shitty team.
Yeah.
A guy like Dan Campbell doesn't look at that and go, just a bad roster. Like, that's a guy that you look at someone like that and you're like, oh shit, that's my guy. Right.
Yeah.
Like, and you start building around that. So I just want to get your perspective on it, because as two people who are sitting here in front of a camera who have been on who support unsuccessful franchises across the board, right, for professional sports. Fortunately for you, you at least have an NBA title under your belt in our lifetime. But
it was pretty dope, man. It was pretty dope.
It's really hard to support an unsuccessful franchise, and because there's not the light at the end of the tunnel. A lot of the times it comes up, right? You're driving down and you start seeing it, and then you're like, oh, injuries, oh, suspension, oh, whatever it may be. Like, it's hard to get to the end of that tunnel. And I think for a Lions fan, and I work with a guy who's a huge Detroit sports fan, and he says it best. He's like, I've just been really patient my whole life, and for the first time in a really long time, I see a coach that actually, it feels like that he wants to win. And
yeah, and reward that patientness out of your fan base by being patient with your coach. Because what did they do upon hiring Dan Campbell? You shipped out Matt Stafford for first-round picks while bringing in Goff, and Goff isn't the answer. And here's the thing: even if the Lions are bad this year, which I expect that they will be, they still need to get that. They need to get that quarterback, and he's probably not going to be good his rookie year, or at least not playoff bound. You know, you're talking now into year 4 of Dan Campbell's career,
right?
So I unfortunately, knowing the way the league works, I don't know if I'm a betting man. I don't think he sees it to year 4. But I hope that he does.
I like it. Appreciate your perspective on that, man. So I think it's time for a Rally Tau Sports classic segment.
This is my favorite thing in the world.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is time for
who the fuck it is.
Here's the thing. So when you start streaming, test your react buttons before you fucking do it, because I just embarrassed myself with the joke drum rather than the who the fuck it is. All right, so Aaron, I know we talked about it before. We got 3 people. Let's keep it to 2. We're at the hour 40-minute mark.
Okay, all right. I got to trim it down. I think I'm good.
So I think that we usually like to keep it around 2 hours here. I know I got to get up real fucking early.
Well, here's the thing. I'm gonna get whatever one you have first so quick that you might be like, well, all right.
All right. So it sounds like I'm going first. So let's do it.
Doesn't matter. I'll go. It doesn't matter. You tell me.
I got it. I'm ready. I got 3 names here, and 2 of these are spicy. I'll just call them spicy.
Okay.
For my second one, I even have in a little quotation. If Aaron gets this, I got to Venmo you like, I don't know, $10, something.
Oh boy, you're going hard on me tonight, aren't you?
I think this is a good one.
Okay.
All right, so I'll do my easier of the 2 here. All right, so this gentleman was drafted by the Grizzlies in 2003 and immediately traded to the Celtics. He's a big man, more known for having a big mouth, running his mouth, kind of jawing and getting into people's heads.
Wait, start over. I'm sorry. Please start over.
Drafted by the Grizzlies in 2003, traded to Boston, was drafted out of high school, right? So I think that's an important part here. Drafted out of high school.
Okay.
Known more for being a shit talker or kind of the big man antics than his actual gameplay.
Kendrick Perkins?
It is Kendrick Perkins. Yeah.
Let's go!
Yeah. I knew as soon as I said shit talker, big man from the Celtics, like, it's Kendrick Perkins.
Well, it was the drafted out of high school. He was like the 22nd pick or something, right? Like he was like a late first round pick, especially for out of high school.
He was the fucking 23rd pick. That's incredible.
Let's go.
Incredible. All right, hit me.
All right. This guy was drafted in the second round in the 2006 NBA draft. He played from 2006 to the 2012 and 2013 season. And I cannot tell you what team he was drafted by because he's only played for one NBA team in his entire NBA career. So from 2006 to 2013, that was with one NBA team. He is best known for his 2007 playoff game where he scored 31 points, 19 of them being in the fourth quarter, assisting LeBron James. He was drafted out of Texas.
So he was only a Cavalier.
Correct.
So played at Texas, played for the Cavs, second round pick. Oh, Boobie Gibson.
That is correct.
Boobie Gibson.
Let's Gibson.
Go.
That was a hard one to give clues for, just because usually we do. Hey, he played for this team, that team. I thought you were going to get that though, even with the limited amount.
That was good. That's a good one because he was like,
he was just a 3-point specialist. He was so undersized.
Yeah, he was like eighth man off the bench, right?
Yeah. 40% 3-point shooter for his career though.
Good for him. He did not play long in the NBA though, did he? There's no way he played more than like 7 years.
He played exactly 7.
Yeah. So I try to reference him. So since you said when you said LeBron, and
that was the.
So I was thinking like that's early LeBron, right? That's not second time around LeBron. So then I had to get in deep into the psyche, and then I remember watching the game and everybody calling him Boobie the whole time. Boobie Gibson, Gibson. Like that's not his name, but.
What's funny is to look him up in Basketball Reference. I typed in Boobie Gibson. Yeah, and they're like no results found. I was like, oh, that's right. His name's Daniel.
All right. Here is my second one for you, and this one is early. I just want to tell you. So after you had told me that your Mary you just said give me team year or whatever. I then was inspired to ask my Mary those questions.
Perfect.
And here's the thing. All three of my people were drafted between the years of 2001 and 2003 or had their best year like in 2006 or 7.
I said, give me a year between 97 and like 2012. So perfect.
Yeah. So I said 03 to 18.
Perfect.
Or no, I said 01 to 18. And she went for Kendrick Perkins. She went 03 Celtics. And then I'll give you the one I'm not going to give you because I think that if I were to give you the nickname Red Mamba, do you know who that is?
Red Mamba.
Played for the Gators. Spent most of his time for the Spurs.
Oh, Corey Brewer?
Red
no, that'd
Mamba.
be Timberwolves. Red Mamba.
Yeah. Red Mamba. So emphasis on the red.
No, Redman?
It's Matt Bonner.
Oh, no, I don't know. I would have gotten that one.
Yeah.
That's a good one, though.
Yeah, so
Matt Boner?
Matt Bonner. She said 2007 Spurs. And I was like, I don't think I've ever looked up a Spurs roster because I only think like
Duncan, Ginobili, Parker.
Yeah. Yeah. David Robinson,
Maybe
Bruce Bowen,
Steven
Sean
Jackson
Elliott.
in there.
Yeah. Like I just only think of those guys. I'm like, those are easy ones. And then I was like, all right, I'll look into it. Like, oh shit, Matt Bonner, the Red Mamba. And then when you look him up in Basketball Reference, it gives you his nickname is Red Mamba. All right. Sorry, I got off topic there. This is also my favorite game in the world. I'm just so happy.
It's the best.
I get to share it with somebody else. All right, so former Indiana Pacer, drafted in 2001 from the Iowa State Cyclones.
That's not helping.
He would have been his most prominent time with the Pacers would have been end of Reggie era, enter Jermaine O'Neal, very early Danny Granger era. So you got to think about. So he was a part of Malice in the Palace. He was also a part of the end of the Jermaine O'Neal, Brad Miller era, and then he was also the introduction to the Danny Granger era. So you're talking early 2000s to late 2000s, early 2010s. So the thing that makes this point guard most notable is he was released from the Pacers because he got arrested 3 times at 9 months from the same strip club in Indianapolis. That's what makes him famous. And he was also Mark Jackson's replacement. So the Pacers go to the NBA Finals in 2000. They draft this person in 2001 to replace Mark Jackson. Also played for the Jazz. Ended his career with the Jazz, actually, in the late 2000s, like early 2010s.
Oh, man, I think I'm stumped. I don't even have a guess. Fuck. His first name isn't Leon, is it?
It is not.
Okay.
No.
Okay. Malice in the Palace. So it's obviously not Ron Artest. It's not Steven Jackson. Who was on that fucking team? Danny Granger. I think I'm stumped. I'm gonna just call it. I'm stumped.
It's Jamal Tinsley.
Oh, Tinsley!
Yeah, Jamal Tinsley.
I remember him.
The 76 overall point guard every single fucking year at NBA Live or NBA 2K because he was only just above average.
Yeah.
You know a fun
DJ Augustine.
Yes, exactly. So the fun fact about Jamal Tinsley is that at that point in time, and so you're kind of coming out of the era of the Stockton, the Jackson, the heavy assist point guard era, and you're getting into the shooting point guard era, the Jason Kidds, Jason Terrys, those kind of guys. Jamal Tinsley averaged at least 9 assists every year that he started at least 75 games.
Wow.
And 3 of his years in Indiana, he averaged over 10 assists.
Wow.
An absolute handler of a basketball, great court general, complete piece of shit off the floor. So he got arrested at the same strip club 3 times in 9 months, and that's why the Pacers released him. Because he was a legitimate liability in the city of Indianapolis.
Wow. I believe that.
I think the rumor is if you go to the PTs in Indianapolis and you speak the words Jamal Tinsley, it's like saying red rum 3 times in the mirror. Like people just get scared out of their skin and they don't know what to do anymore.
That's amazing.
Oh, all right. So you got one more for me, right?
I got one more for you. So this guy was drafted in 2007 as the 21st overall pick, technically drafted by the Sixers, but let's forget all of that and just say he was drafted by the Miami Heat, where he spent 3 years.
Oh, I know it already.
Okay, go ahead.
Did he go to Ohio State?
Yeah.
Saquon Cook.
Yeah, my next clue was going to be he was the third guy drafted in the 2007 draft from the same college. So
Yeah.
good job. Yeah. Greg
Thank
Oden,
you.
Mike Conley. Damn.
Yes, that was so. Here's the thing. So those guys, oh shit, what is that book? So there was a guy that played AAU basketball with those guys.
Mike Titus, Club Trillion.
Mike Titus. Yes. They played AAU basketball together, and fucking Josh McRoberts was on that team too.
Yeah.
That was
I love the Club Trillion thing. He like before YouTube was even like a thing, had that like video where he's just like taking shots in the gym, like to like 80s fucking hype up music.
Yes.
It's so fucking funny.
So living in Columbus, he makes guest appearances to places.
Yeah.
That's like
Who, Daquan Cook?
No.
Mark
Titus.
Yeah.
Mark Titus. Yeah.
Mark Titus.
Because he was a 4-year walk-on for the Buckeyes, right? Like he's like a legend around this area.
He was like Bill Simmons's quote unquote adopted son. Because he just thought this dude was hilarious. And then he brought him onto Grantland and the Ringer to do like college basketball. And then he spurned that with him and his buddy to do their own college basketball shit now, which is great. And the Club Trillion, if people don't know, is 1 minute on the box score with no other stats.
Yes.
Get a trill.
He's like, I mean, the city of Columbus loves it. I was talking to a guy that I work with. So I have two guys that I could talk sports with at work, right? Because I work for a technology company. It's few and far between.
Sure.
So I have a Detroit sports guy and I have a Bengals and Buckeyes guy. And as somebody who is not an Ohio State fan, I love doing devil's advocate with him because he's an Ohio State grad. He's super knowledgeable for baseball for football and basketball both. And we were just talking about him like 3 weeks ago. So there's a big open mall up here called Easton Town Center.
I know Easton, yeah.
Yeah, it's the kitties titties of outdoor malls, right?
You have that in Polaris.
Yes. So Bobby lives by Polaris. I used to live by Polaris. That's the hybrid mall that still exists where I would when Declan wouldn't fall asleep for like a morning nap, I would drive him over there and walk him around the mall and get him to fall asleep.
Smart.
Yeah. So
the smell of fucking takeout Japanese just puts him right to sleep.
It's Annie Ann's pretzels because there's 7 of them in Polaris Mall for no reason. There's like 1 in each corner. I don't know. It makes no sense. But so he did a meet and greet at a restaurant at like a Brio's or something at Easton. And they had to shut the restaurant down because there were like 2,000 people there for this dude.
Yeah, dude. He has like a cult following.
Yes. And he was like, oh man, I went to go see him, but I was like an hour late because I didn't show up at 8 a.m. for this 1 o'clock thing. Like
That's
there were
insane.
100 people, 200 people waiting for this guy when he got there. And it just got too chaotic and they had to shut it down. Or it was like at a bookstore or something that's near a Brio's and it was affecting people getting in and out of the restaurant and like the whole thing. But like, it's so cool to like, cause the book he's funny, right?
He's hilarious.
And you hear like the stuff where he has like conversations with Josh McRoberts. Cause at that point in time, if you read the book and you look back at that, Josh McRoberts was the best athlete of that team. And he went to Duke, right? He went to the best basketball university of all those guys. And Josh McRoberts was nothing more than just like a fucking pothead that was really, really good at basketball.
Yeah.
And I just think that's great because he makes everything so relatable, right?
Yeah.
Because like
Mark Titus told this hilarious story of his senior year was Evan Turner's rookie year.
It was his freshman year.
Yeah. And he was like basically just like catching his shots. Like he was like doing free throws or 3-pointers or whatever. And Evan Turner would just like chuck the ball at him. And Mark Titus as the senior was like, that shit's not going to fly. And would just like roll it back to him. Like, it's like, because Evan Turner was like a really high intensity guy. It was kind of a dick.
And he was also a 5-star recruit for Ohio State, which was very few and far between for Ohio State basketball at that point in time.
Well, not really, because at that point they had gone through.
That was
Odin Conley, because he was with Odin and Conley, but
that was the Thad Matta era. I keep forgetting that Thad Matta went there and he turned that program from like bottom Big Ten to top Big Ten, and
they were great. Actually, some of the best basketball I ever watched out of them was at BG when I was there. Like, it was Sullinger, Aaron Kraft, Lighty, Butler. It was awesome. But yeah, anyway.
Jared Sullinger. So Sullinger also is a Columbus guy.
Yeah.
Born and raised on the like where I'm at now on the southwest side of Columbus. And he does a fundraiser here every year. And I'm trying to get some deets on it because I'm trying to get old Rally Tal Sports involved in it somehow, some way. Because I'd love to meet Jared Sullinger and ask him how it felt to get manhandled by Josh Harrelson and the Elite Eight. Because
I'm sure
I would love that. And I would just like to see his reaction to somebody who's probably like 2 inches shorter, but about the same size, walk up at all Kentucky stuff and just see what he would do.
Here's the thing. I love Ohio State. I do. Cause I've pretty much lived in Ohio most, if not all my life. And, I'm like indifferent about it. That's the thing that my friends a bunch of my friends went to Ohio State where they like live and die by it. And then Ohio State loses. And I'm like, well, whatever.
Dude, I
know Columbus is nuts.
It's so when they lost to Oregon, I was at work, right? So I'm at CarMax and it's they petitioned, the CarMaxes in Columbus petitioned to be able to wear Ohio State shit on Saturdays. It's the only 2 stores in the whole entire company that get to wear college attire on Saturdays. Only Makes 2
sense.
stores.
Makes sense, though.
The salesman, what
was the other one? Tuscaloosa?
No, there's 2 Columbus stores. And
I thought you were saying there's okay.
No, that's it. And there's fucking 250 of them now, so whatever. But so another manager that I worked with, his son is an edge rusher for Ohio State right now.
Oh wow.
His last name's Harrison. I can't think of his first name right now. But he was a 5-star, right? Like he was a top 50, ESPN top 50, like big fucking deal. And when they lost to Oregon, nobody showed up in our building for 2 hours. And this is a Saturday, the busiest day of the week, right? When you're supposed to be selling 40% or 30% of your cars, there was nobody in the building. And it was silent. I mean, fucking silent. And I'm just sitting in the office and everybody's sulking around. And I was like, what's everybody upset about? They're like, well, weren't you watching the TV? The Buckeyes just lost to the Ducks. And I'm like, are you playing? Like, are you? And another employee came in. He was like, you don't understand, man. Like, this is a winning culture. I was like, well, I'm a Kentucky basketball fan, so like, I get the fan base, right? Because I'm very similar to you.
But you're a Kentucky basketball fan, but there's something about being a fan while living in it. You know what I mean? Like as like a Browns fan, when we lose on Sunday, Monday in Cleveland hits different than like if I'm a Browns fan that lives in like Tucson.
Sure. No, look, you got to remember, I lived in Cincinnati my whole life during the Jeff Blake, Achilles Smith, John Kitna era.
Yeah.
Up to the Carson Palmer era, and then through all of that. So I understand that part. But like, maybe it's just because I watch sports differently. I've never understood someone getting so immersed into a sport that it literally just. I understand it really sucks when somebody loses. It sucks when your team loses because like you don't have anything. There's nothing good to talk about at the water cooler on Monday.
Yeah.
Right. But a guy left work. Like that's how upset somebody was.
I believe it. I'm just not that big of a college guy. Like I am that exact way for pro. So I can't really talk down to it. And I know we're running out of time here, so I'm going to leave you with one last story. When I first started dating Mary, she didn't really get the whole Browns thing. And there's this hilarious, I don't know who it is. I'll give credit to it next time I'm on. I'll look it up. There's this hilarious adult coloring book by a Cleveland sports fan that's just called "Why Is Daddy Sad on Sundays?" And it's like a coloring book of like it's like the drive, like the fumble, and I like showed this to her and she thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I told her I'd get it and I haven't yet, but I will at some point. But she finally understands it. So yeah, why is Daddy sad on Sundays?
That's fantastic. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for stopping in with us tonight. We will be back tomorrow for Line to Gain / let's call it a Town Hall Thursday. We don't really have any topics planned out yet. So if you guys have anything that you want us to talk about tomorrow, it's kind of an open book. I'd love to touch on college football a little bit. Now that we're talking football, let's get a little college football in there.
Got some rankings out there.
Yeah. So it's an open book. This is Dingers, Dunks, and Drives. Again, presented by Rally Towel Sports, hosted by Mafia Sports Report. I am Todd. With me is Aaron. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good night.